Good morning. My name is Jayson Coil, Operations Section Chief for Southwest Area Team 1. Today is July 21st, and this is your morning operational update for the Laguna fire. Right now, we are mapping the fire at 16,713 acres. We did not get infrared last night. We are using a drone this morning to map the perimeter, and when we get updated numbers, I'm sure we'll provide those to you. The fire is still 55% contained, and there are 325 personnel assigned to the incident. Before I go to the map, I was reflecting this morning on some of the different decision-making activities that we've had to engage in over the last several days to prepare for and to implement the plan that we have in front of us right now. And one of the things that struck me was how important it is when we implement these plans to be able to stick within the right framework. And so I just thought I would share that with you all about how we do this and why it's important, and how sometimes it can come across as being ambiguous or where we're uncertain about what we're going to do. And the framework that we use is called the Cynefin framework, and it's talks about the different domains and basically in a simple domain, like if you were working on something on your vehicle where you could do it, in order from removing one piece to putting the final piece back on, then being able to categorize things, the different steps, developing a checklist, everything. That's an effective way to do it, right? If we try to do that when we're dealing with the environment, especially with some of the conditions that we're facing right now, what we have planned for today, we would fail. So the approach we take is called probe, sense, and respond. So probe, you try something. It could be a test fire. It could be seeing if you can get a dozer line up a particularly rocky ridge, and then you sense, you see if it worked or didn't work, and then you respond. And we respond in two different ways. One way we respond if it's working well is we scale up and we speed up. And if it's not working well, then we adapt and we try something different. And that's complexity. That's the way that you deal with it. And I think one of the other key points is that cause and effect, because there's so many different variables, like whether a test fire, you get the results you want from that, whether burning conditions are what you think they were. The cause and effect is usually only visible in hindsight. And it makes it where you spend a lot less time worrying about all the different inputs, and instead you worry about the result, and then you adapt off of that result. Unfortunately, there's many times when people tend to look at a outcome, and then in hindsight say, well, you should have known that was going to happen, and we don't know. And that's why we adapt off of our plans as we move forward. So that's the approach we take, and that's the approach we're going to be taking today. And I'll go to the map and show you how we're going to be applying that in the two different sections of the fire. All right, so we're going to start up north on Division Alpha. Yesterday I talked about them completing their burnout operation up here in the northwest corner and tying into to those natural control features, and then back down into the main fire's edge with the intent of, over a little bit to the left there, with this natural barrier, and then down to the main fire's edge, with the intent of keeping the fire out of the Galena drainage there. And yesterday, they had unfavorable winds. There were a lot of outflows from thunderstorms, and so they did not do any of that ignition. The natural fire has moved some in there, quite a bit actually, went at least one ridge over to the north, which is fine. It's within our containment lines. And so today, they're going to go out there and see if they can get a map mission completed with the UAS to find out exactly where that fire's edge is. And then what they'll do is they'll identify the ridges between the fire's edge and this natural barrier. And if conditions permit, they will drop some of the aerial ignition devices along the top of these small little ridges so the fire can back down to the drainage bottom. That's to reduce fire intensity, reduce the potential that it spots across that natural barrier, and contain it within those lines. Again, this is our primary plan. The secondary plan is out here through the grave fire scar on this dozer line and hand line and improved road that we made, and then all the way out the the Galena drainage, if you will, and then back to the cold edge of the fire. The tertiary plan, which is almost complete, is using I think this is called the 8 road. Forgive me, I forgot. And then across the Galena Mountain Road, and then back down south to drop point 28, and then tying into the rocks that come across down to the ridge that separates the Rio Chama from the Galena River corridor. And expect to get that tertiary line completed in a couple, 3 days. We have a high degree of confidence in our primary plan. However, making sure that we have a fallback plan and a fallback after that is good business, especially when you're dealing with monsoons and outflows. The rest of the fire's edge is along here. Showed some activity yesterday and some movement. If you come all the way around this corner, but it was minimal, and that's good. And still seeing some of the benefit of those cooler and moister days that we had prior, although it is definitely drying and heating up. Kind of illustrate that about how it was drying and heating up. Yesterday morning on our first UAS flight, first drone flight to map this fire's edge with infrared, it looked almost like it was out. And matter of fact, some people were saying, I think it's out. And I was like, I don't think it's out. But anyhow, so we waited a couple hours until the sun came on it. And then you really didn't even need to use the drone to see how much fire activity was there. So while that moisture gave us a couple hours of minimal fire behavior, the whole fire's edge was active later in the day. And so that reaffirmed the decision that we made to begin our operation here on the south-facing side of the La Presa drainage. And we put in a wet line. So we used those big, heavy helicopters to, create a line of very wet dirt from the top all the way down until the rocky cliffs above what we're just calling the Big Fork, because the drainage looks like a fork there. And then they used aerial ignition devices to burn adjacent to that wet line. We got really good fire effects yesterday. The fire was just backing underneath the canopy. There wasn't any torching observed. And so this morning what they're going to do is they're going to go back in there and continue working along this edge and tie it back into to those cliffs, and then evaluate conditions. And if conditions are favorable, then underneath this whole big active piece of fire, they're going to start from the west and move to the east and bring fire down that ridge. So that is that they will be dropping the aerial ignition devices, and with the intent of backing the fire down that ridge to this natural barrier. Actually, it's this natural barrier right here on this side of the drainage. And they'll continue that up until we get past all the area where the active fire edge is, and then we'll try to use natural features to tie it back into the main fire's edge. So they did get that work. It began yesterday, and then we hope to be able to implement more of it today, conditions permitting. And remember, well, I should say remember because I haven't said this yet, but we anticipate that the weather is going to get hotter and drier. That's the forecast we're getting over the next several days. So one of the challenges that we face right now is that not letting perfect be the enemy of good. If the conditions are good enough, we should implement and we should scale if we're successful. If we wait until the perfect conditions, they may never occur. Conditions will continue to get hotter, drier, and then we'll get more untoward fire effects. So we'll get more torching, things that we don't want, more impact to the drainage in the watershed. So it's a balance. That's why we go through that probe, sense, respond process multiple times during the day. That's why I can't tell you we're going to start here and finish here each day. But hopefully that helps you to kind of see inside some of our decision-making process and understand why we have adopted the approach that we have. So that concludes your morning operational update. Thank you.